Hello and welcome everyone to the National Veterans Small Business Coalition's virtual training series. We're thrilled to have back for number 3, Vic Singh from V Singh CPA LLC. And Vic, I see internal controls. Well, that's very important. And documentation for DCAA compliance. So I'm just gonna turn this on over to you and let you take it from here. And I'll have questions, so I'm excited to learn some more. First 2 have been amazing.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Again, this is Vic Singh with VSing CPA, focused with government contractors all around accounting, compliance, and advisory. Again, this 4-part series is all around DCA compliance. Now we're jumping into internal controls and documentation for DCAA compliance. Again, I think it's important for us to understand our foundation, what is really required when it comes to internal controls. Today's objective is, how do we prevent audit findings? How do we improve operational efficiencies? And what do you really need to do on a day-to-day basis? So if somebody were to come to you, you can answer questions confidently. What is internal control? End of the day, it's all about your foundation. It's all about your policies and procedures. Are they documented properly? DCA has its own definition. My definition is, have it in writing and comply with it. If you're going to say, hey, my employees are required to do timesheet on daily basis, well, then have them do their timesheet on daily basis. If you're required that supervisor needs to review and approve and sign off on timesheets, well, then have your supervisors have those timesheets reviewed and approved by supervisors. And end of the day, what is foundation, right? It's all policies and procedures. And then they get converted into SF 1408, and then they get converted into your acceptable accounting system. Then they get converted into a contractor who is in compliance, right? So that's where it all starts. Foundation, policy and procedures, SF 1408, approved accounting system, DCA audit, acceptable audit, you are good in DCA audit, in DCA's point of view. So I would say that internal control starts all with policy and procedures and being able to answer questions if you're asked by someone else, right? It doesn't matter if it's a third party, right? It could be your colleague, right? Asking you, hey, what is this number? Can you answer it confidently? It is your leadership asking you a question. Can you answer those questions? You as an accountant, being accountant at a small business owner who's acting in multiple positions, can you answer those questions? So anyways, you want to make sure everything is lined up and transparent. Internal control equals to transparency. In GovCon world, I would say documentation. When you have documentation, it becomes that much easier to answer questions. It is a essential part of internal controls. Where's the money coming from and where's the money going? If anybody were to come in and audit your books, I'm not saying DCA, it could be a GAAP auditor who's coming in and validating your financial statements for banking purposes, for bonding purposes, whatever the purpose is. You want to be able to come in and justify your numbers. You never want to be in a position if there is $100,000 sitting in your fringe account. Well, you want to be in a position where you can actually break down that $100,000 into various accounts healthcare costs, workers' comp, FICA, your payroll expenses. Oh, not only break it down, but be able to support it with the third-party documents. That's, and then you want to make sure that whatever money goes out the door, before it goes out the door, is it properly booked on your financial statements? 5 internal control areas DCA normally looks at. The big one, the most important one is labor controls. Obviously, everything from labor controls to policy and procedures and the billing, they all add up to your total accounting controls. But the reason I say labor control is one of the most important is because if you think about it, there is no third-party document. For example, if you if you pay a rent expense every month, you have a rental, you pay your landlord, your office rent, there is third-party document. What is that third-party document? Either you're receiving a statement from your landlord every month, hey, you have $2,000 office expense due, you take that document, you create a bill, and you pay your landlord. That's a third-party document, that invoice or statement that comes. Your lease is a third-party document, not prepared by you, not prepared by DCA, it's prepared by third party. You have a document. Well, when it comes to timesheets and or labor controls, there's no third party document. It's all within the company. It's an employee have a timesheet. They're selecting a charge code. They're putting in 8 hours, and then each payroll, the last day of the payroll could be weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly. Supervisors coming in and signing off on that timesheet, saying, yep, this employee worked X amount of hours. Yep, this person's satisfied. So there's employee and the supervisors. They both agree. That's your control. Where is the third party document? There's no third party. This is one person certifying, another person saying, yep, I agree. We're good. Well, if there's a fraud in here, how do you prevent that? How do you know employee actually worked 8 hours? How do you know if this person actually worked 5 hours and entered at 8 hours? Supervisor doesn't know. In today's world, everybody's working remote. So the only thing you can do around this particular item is staying on top of it. Well, how do you stay on top of it? Have a clear policy and procedures, communicate with your employees, understand what they're working on. Does it take that much effort for this employee to produce this product? Is it reasonable? Is it justifiable? And then you sign off on it. That's your labor control. So hence why I say, since there's no third-party document, it's really one person saying, another person validating it, signing off on it, and that's what government is relying on it. And that's where the trust comes in, and you want to stay on top of it. You want to build that trust. You want to make sure everything is working, you're following the policy and procedures, around timekeeping, and everything, and the data is flowing correctly, and your internal controls are being followed properly. Billing controls, if your timekeeping is correct, your billing controls are going to be correct, right? When I say billing controls are going to be correct, obviously data is coming from timesheet, is flowing through the billing module. The person who's actually preparing the billing, they could come back to the person who signed off the timesheet and say, hey, this person worked 9 hours, you signed off on it, I'm about to bill 9 hours to the client, can you justify these 9 hours? Well, going back to my original comment, you have to be able to justify it. Okay? And it all starts with policy and procedures.
I love this slide, Vic. I really love this slide because it isn't just accounting, right? It ties in HR, the HR policies. And I'm just going to toss out an industry area. I'm going to toss out construction. If it's a construction company, then they have a safety policy, right? Which ties into, I'm going to say that word, indirect costs, right? Because there are certain safety policies or safety procedures that need to be that need to be in place, which do have a cost, an indirect cost for the operations of the business. I see your accounting brain is clickety clicking right there. And so, but that, you know, you not only have the labor, but then you have the indirect associated with it. But what does that tell the business owner? I have to have these policies and procedures in place based on my industry and based on the scope of my work with not only this contract, but my business on whole. So when they start to formulate what type of business they want to be when they grow up, they know that they have to have this portfolio, I'm going to say portfolio of policies to be thinking about and kind of documenting as they create and grow their business. I'm going to stop here.
Yeah, I think it's the best way to do it. I'm in a business of accounting, compliance, and advisory, Mary, and clients come to me and they're like, "Hey, you're in a business of outsourced GovCon accounting. You must have an accounting manual that you can hand it over to me, and I'll modify accordingly." And I don't mind doing that. It's not about making money or anything like that. But to me, every business is different, right? And I'm like, what are you doing on a daily basis? And is that how you want to operate? Let's document how you want to operate. That becomes your policy and procedures. Now, keep in mind, obviously you have to have, you want to make sure you're following industry standards. What are the industry standards? Industry standard requires that you have a consistent approach of handling your day-to-day business, right? You want to make sure your employees are completing timesheet daily. Now, some people have daily by 5 p.m. today. Some people have daily with a grace period of 10 a.m. tomorrow. You could have 11 a.m., noon, whatever works for your workforce. Document it and then comply with it. So every company works slightly different. So my best approach is, portfolio for policy and procedures. You want to have your policy and procedures based on how you're practicing daily basis, as long as it's within industry standard and compliance. Make sure you're not doing anything illegal. And you could be different, right? As long as you're doing the right thing. And then have policy and procedures around timekeeping, around expense, around bonuses, around how you pay your monthly expenses related to rent, phone bills, internet, how many subscription you have, who's responsible to add vendors to the system. Last thing you want to do, have a ghost vendor in the system and somebody's getting paid and nobody knows about it. It's being reconciled and the cash is going out, but it's tied to a vendor, it's tied to a cost. Where is it going? Nobody knows. So you want to make sure you have all these little things all tied up and being able to say, yep, everything makes sense. Because last thing you want to know as an owner, and I'm speaking about like now I'm talking about owners that are like a little bit large, is seeing office expense line 1 month is 1,000, next month is 5,000, then it goes to 2,000. The trend looks good, but what is within those numbers? You don't know, right? So these little things, having a proper policy and procedures and internal controls prevent all that.
Great. I love it. I love it.
Year-end documentation review, what to check. Going back to timekeeping, I think timekeeping is the biggest cost on anyone's financial statements. It's you gotta have, you want to make sure your timekeeping is tying to your payroll system. Your payroll system is tying to the billing. The billing is tying to your funding. Your funding is tying to your contract briefs. And end of the day, you want to make sure all the dots are connected. They're connecting, right? If they're not connecting, there's a discrepancy. You want to raise them on a monthly basis and or frequently if you can. Because the easier the more you review, the faster you're going to find the errors, and the better you're going to prevent them.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. And then it's also a way to make sure that the protocol is correct. Yeah. No, I get it. It's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I tell my staff is that, one thing, the one most important document is balance sheet. And anything that's on the balance sheet has to be reconciled and validated each month. If you don't understand what balance sheet is, then step back, and ask questions, right? What is balance sheet, right? Like, you want to make sure at end of each month, because there could be items on the balance sheet. And by the way, that could be a topic by itself, you know.
Another
Um,
one to note down. Okay.
right. What is on the balance sheet? And I think this is more important to individuals who are into the business, 20 to 25 million in revenue, probably thinking to exit. Um, it becomes a very important document if you're thinking about exit strategy, where you're trying to go into the business, but it is a carryover balance from year over year. And you want to be able to support those balances, like what makes up those balances end of each month. For example, you have an insurance bill that you paid month of November of 2025 until October of next year. Well, and it's a $1,200 invoice or $12,000 invoice. Well, end of December 31st, if it's a $12,000 invoice, I'm expecting $11,000 as a prepaid asset, right? Because that $12,000 was paid for 12 months. Well, November, December was expense. Well, I'm sorry, I'm expecting $10,000 on the balance sheet, right? Because the other 10,000 is from January through October of 2026. So all these things little matter. Now, small business owners, they're not thinking this accounting, which is accrual accounting, because they're thinking, hey, I paid $12,000, therefore it's an expense. It goes out. No, that's not how DCA GovCon accounting works. DCA GovCon accounting is on accrual accounting, meaning, hey, I want to see expense the month it benefits. You follow me?
I
So,
do follow. I do follow.
right.
Yep.
So it becomes very important for special. I mean, the larger business owners, Mary, what I'm noticing, they have grasped it. They have heard it so many times from different
Right.
peers and friends. So they got the idea. It's the new business owners, I think they could use this information to kind of help them out. Like, yeah, oh man, where does it
Yep.
go? All right. And the balance sheet becomes a very, very important tool because it tells you how healthy you are. You know, it really does because there's $12,000 in this example paid. You haven't expensed it, but as of December 31st, 2025, you still have 10,000 with you, which you will receive the benefit for. If you were
Right.
to sell your company, you want to be able to say, hey, there's a $10,000 I prepaid, therefore this needs to be adjusted in my price.
Right.
Anyways, so
Adjustments and accruals, right? Adjustments and accruals are, yeah.
they're huge. They're huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure at the end of the day, your year-end documentation makes sense, especially from balance sheet perspective. And I
Yeah.
tell my people, if your balance sheet is correct, most likely your P&L is going to be correct. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Timekeeping system critical for DCA compliance, very, very critical, right? When DCA knocks on your door for DCA timekeeping audit purposes, they're going to talk to the supervisor first. Obviously, they're going to talk to the management first. Hey, we're coming into audit. They're going to ask for policy and procedures. They're going to take their time and read the policy and procedures, and they're going to look for a few things in the policy and procedures saying, oh, this person says, or this company says they have their employee do their timesheet on daily basis by 5 p.m. And then they're going to go to the supervisor and they say, hey, I want to interview 5 of these people on your contract. And then they're going to go to the employees and they're going to say, hey, I would like to ask a few questions. And they're going to ask questions like, have you ever received a training on timekeeping policy? And I hope the answer is yes. And then the follow-on question may be, what project are you working on? And they're going to say project ABC. And they were like, well, can you pull up your timesheet and show me which project on your timesheet, the charge code, where you're going to charge this time to you? And they're going to pull up the charge code, and the actual work that's happening needs to tie to the charge code that is being billed or charged against. And is that the time that's being billed correctly? So that's how they're checking. So it's important to understand that employees actually have appropriate training, employees know what they're doing, and employees know where they're charging. And then most importantly, the supervisor know what they're working and where they're charging, and they know what they're approving.
Right? How do you track your hours? How can you validate, the number of hours per project that you've been working on in a day? In my old days at DOE, that was something that we had to track, right? Where the number of hours we would put in, for the various projects we were assigned to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a huge item.
Yeah. Okay. I have a few more slides related to labor. And the reason I have more slides on labor because I feel like this is the most important piece that we need to talk about. Mary, believe it or not, I actually have seen business owners. They're under assumption they're business owners. They don't need to do timesheets because
Oh.
they're getting a salaried paycheck. There's all their time is G&A, therefore they don't need to do timesheets. Well, that's not how it works in GovCon accounting. In GovCon accounting, we call something like total time accounting, meaning the government wants to see every hour that was worked. They want to see it on the timesheet because that's what drives indirect rates.
Say that one more time, Vic, because that is so important. Say
Yeah,
that
sure.
over.
Sure.
Okay.
So, total time accounting is a term that is frequently used by defense contract audit agency, and DCAA is huge, right? If it's blessed by DCAA, most likely it's going to be blessed by other agencies. Now, I've seen situations where business owners have made assumptions with lack of knowledge that because they are business owners, because their time is not being billed to the government directly, it's not direct cost. They don't need to book their time because why does it matter? It's not, they have a salary check, their time is not being billed. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because if they have any concern about indirect rates, their time needs to be properly booked to the G&A or whatever project, whatever indirect project they're working on, i.e. G&A, general administration, overall company efforts. It still needs to be booked correctly. Now, you know this, that if somebody's getting paid 120K a year, and they're getting vacation payout also, sick leave. well, then we need to properly allocate that cost to G&A or pay time off or holiday. Well, if you're not booking your time on timesheet, how is that getting allocated?
Good question. And that's important for people to realize, right?
Right. So end of the day, you know, we want to make sure. And when it comes to GovCon accounting, Mary, also is that there's two sides. You know, when I talk about commercial, right? You know, like, and
Yep.
I'm talking when talk about commercial, I'm talking about small mom and pop shops, right? Like, there's general ledger. That's all they're concerned about. General ledger. Here's my revenue. Here's my expenses, and that's it. Well, in GovCon world, is GL they have to be concerned about, obviously, and then they have to concern about the project ledger. So they have to make sure their general ledger, i.e., direct costs in the general ledger side, it's only going to show you one account called direct cost, but then that direct cost gets allocated to multiple different projects.
Yep. Yeah.
When DCA does ask questions, you know, obviously they are not just gonna look at the dollar numbers. They are gonna look at the hours. They're gonna look at the pay rates. They're gonna look at the bill rates. They're gonna look at the modification. When was the last bill rate was updated? Is it properly on the in the billing module? Again, you know, from offer letter to the earning statements to timesheets to the billing, it all needs to connect.
Right. It's got to tie because they're going to look at the entire flow. They're going to look at from the contract start, what was negotiated in the contract, all the way through. And they want to make sure that everything has been compliant throughout the contract to that point that they're doing the audit on. Oh, okay.
100%, 100%. This is one area I feel like we have all the third-party documents, and when we talk about labor, we don't have third-party documents. When it comes to expense documentation and employee travel, they went outside of the country for business purposes. They come back and they have the receipts, they have justification. It was authorized travel. You know, I think the challenge here is the procedures, how it is being handled. Like, for example, if an employee comes back from travel today, do they have all the receipts available? If they have all the receipts available, then they immediately needs to submit an expense report. So it can be booked accordingly within the time frame, and it can be billed accordingly. And whenever I talk about expense reports or expense documentation, not just expense reports, but even like indirect expenses, like you know, internet expense or insurance expense, you want to make sure you have appropriate documentation, and you want to make sure it's not only appropriate documentation, but is it booked in the right period, a right accounting period. And then other thing, sorry, go ahead.
And there should be a policy and procedure around this as well.
Yeah, and I think the Bible is accounting manual. And you know, you want to have an accounting manual that covers every component of different areas within accounting.
Yep.
There you go. You talked about it. It's right here.
That I was a good lead-in for this one, huh?
Yeah, 100%. I think you want to have a documentation around how you practice every day, around timekeeping, you know, indirect rate methodology that you're using. How are you, you know, you could be a prime contractor and you want to hire multiple subcontractors. Well, what are you doing in order to select an appropriate subcontractor for this effort? How are you comparing? Are you just going and picking your friend as a subcontractor, or are you actually comparing multiple subcontractor and say, hey, this is the subcontractor who's going to provide the best benefit for the U.S. government?
Yep. Yes.
Most importantly, I think, the best way to kind of manage your internal control is communication, is talking to your team on daily basis, as frequent as possible. Train your team. Like, the tone at the top makes a huge difference. The leadership makes a huge difference, right? Now, a business owner who's not doing their timekeeping on regular, consistent basis cannot expect their workforce to do a timesheet on daily basis. You, one might say, hey, it doesn't matter what the boss is doing. You got to do it right. Sure, I agree, but it's that mindset doesn't fit well, right? It doesn't. It just doesn't, right? So if you expect your employees to do a timesheet on daily basis, well, did you do your right? Right.
Right.
And what is the leadership's vision? Is that vision, or what is their mission? Are they conveying that correctly to their team, to their program managers, to their supervisor? Are the supervisors communicating it properly to the team? This is where I think the workforce that's bringing in the revenue, and the workforce that's supporting the revenue workforce, i.e., IT department, the HR department, the security department, the finance and accounting department, are all these departments collaborating in order to help? Because remember, when the business started, it was one person doing everything. Now the business has expanded. Now there's five people, five different departments, but the mindset should still be the same, and the product is still the same. It's just handled by different people, but now we're all there on the same page. The only way to bring them on the same page, to having those internal controls, policy, and procedures documented, and make sure you're going through them on a regular basis.
Right. Yep. Annual training or annual refreshers on payroll, on you name it, the topic, payroll, timesheets, how to bill, how to do receivables. Yeah, kind of like an annual refresher on protocols. Yeah.
Yes, self-assessment. Like when we talk about self-assessment, SF 1408, self-assessment on individual, self-assessment on the department itself, right? All these little things add up to one big thing.
Right. I agree. Yep. It's getting all the ducks lined up in a row.
100%. Common, frequent deficiencies that I've noticed in my 20 years of being in GovCon is that lack of policy and procedures, and I noticed this with new business owners because they don't know. Like, they don't know what they don't know, and this is where you and I come in, like, hey, help them train. It's really policy and procedures. Like, do they have a good roadmap that they should follow? But if they don't have a map, they don't know where to pick it up from. They just don't have it. And like the other example I gave you, owners make an assumption that they don't have to do timesheets because they're the owners and nobody's asking them questions, and they don't build their hours. Not that they don't want to do it, they just don't know it. So, I think the biggest thing is talking to the right people and making sure you are complying within your swim lane, and you're following the right direction. Um, Billing the client where timesheet is not signed, or timesheet may be signed by an employee but not approved by a supervisor and is being billed to the client. Is that an issue? Well, I
Yeah,
think so. I think so because who validated it?
right. Have deliverables been met? Yeah, it's a thing. It's a big issue. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Well, key takeaway from the internal controls, I would say, um, documentation. Um, writing, having a written policy and procedures, not, yes, sometimes, you may get away from like, hey, this is how I do it every time. It may not, it's maybe not documented, but this is how I do it. And it's right, but it's not documented. It may work at a smaller scale, but as you grow, it's not going to work because now you have multiple people within an organization. Everyone has their own opinions, and we can't have everyone's opinions. We need to have one solid direction. And I feel like having that documentation is important.
Yes, I agree. Yep. Got to steer the ship in the right way.
Yeah, and Mary, this is all I have for this session. And the next section is what happens after we submit incurred cost submissions.
Okay. Well, this has been a lot of information to digest, and a lot of key takeaways, documentation, and procedures and policies, not just in one aspect of the company, but across all. So I am looking forward to the next session. And with this, everyone, I am going to call this one a wrap, and we will see you on the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.